Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason. I'm here bringing us the retrospective for UFC 254 and the look ahead to Hall versus Silva and what will be Anderson Silva's retirement match. But let's talk first about UFC 254. So, hey, 29-0. What more can you say about the guy? Well, I'll say a little bit more in a few seconds here. But, Khabib Nurmagomedov retires undefeated. It ends up being a very emotional night for him, and hats off to him. He performed spectacularly. We, on the other hand, did okay, pretty good. Not quite at Khabib level. We went 8-4-1. We had that one draw in there with Jung and Alvey. So it's about 2/3% accuracy, 66 and 2/3% accurate, 8-4-1. So not too bad, pretty solid. Obviously, we missed the Gaethje Khabib fight. I was pulling for Gaethje there, but just 5%. So I didn't think it was too likely. But anyways, let's get into it. Here's the show. Alright, so let's talk about the main event. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Justin Gaethje. This one ended, obviously, with Khabib having his own retirement match and retiring undefeated 29-0. He looked phenomenal that night. His pressure on Gaethje was spectacular. He didn't let Gaethje rest at all. Gaethje was tired going into round two. Whitman was telling him, hey, slow down, you got a lot more rounds here. But ultimately, we didn't need more rounds because in the very early moments of the second round, minute 34 seconds in, Khabib ends up picking up the submission victory via triangle choke. Khabib, his pressure was relentless. He never let Gaethje catch a breath. Gaethje kept circling to stay off the cage, and I know that's not typically his style, but it's what he had to do to stay off the cage. But the problem is, even when he wasn't on the cage, he was able to be taken down. That's what ended up happening in the second round. Obviously, the first takedown in the first round, he was a little bit more towards the cage and had no escape route when he went to sprawl. So Khabib just nullified all of his defense, and then ultimately made Gaethje look pretty bad once he was on the ground. Gaethje really didn't have any defense at all for Khabib. He was nearly submitted in the first round, let's face facts. On the feet, though, I thought Gaethje executed his game plan well. He did have to throw a lot of winging wild shots to try to keep Khabib off of him. Connected with one, didn't really do much with it, but he did have one solid shot. And then the leg kicks. I think the leg kicks could have added up over a war of attrition. I think that they could have been the money in the bank. They could have potentially stopped Khabib in later rounds, but we never get there. Khabib was too good, and he never allowed Gaethje to find any rhythm. He was constantly on the back foot, constantly circling, and that version of Khabib was probably one of the best versions we've ever seen. I mean, I know he took Poirier down at will, and he beat him up over their fight, and obviously he had moments against Conor where he was absolutely smashing him, but that version of Khabib that we saw on Saturday was better than either two of those last performances. And then you go back to Al Iaquinta, where maybe Al had the best fight with Khabib out of anybody he's ever fought, taking him a decision and having moments. I personally think his best fight overall through his career, or best opponent, was Conor winning the third round, although Gaethje did supposedly win this round here. So either it's Iaquinta because he went the decision, it's Conor because he stole round 3, or it's Gaethje because he stole round 1. But I have a hard time saying Gaethje totally stole round 1 because of the takedown in Conor's third round. He was not taken down. He managed to keep it standing, and I thought was a little more successful. But none of it really matters. I mean, this guy at most has one blemish on his record for one round. He's 29-0. He made 3 successful title defenses, and he is the lineal champion that goes off into retirement. So the only real question now is what will happen to lightweight. Me personally, I think Poirier and Conor are going to be fighting for the strap in January, and then I think things will go from there. Where Chandler fits in the situation, Tony, Hooker, Charles Do Bronx Oliveira, all these guys, will obviously be clashing and fighting, and we'll end up with some new champion, or at least early in 2021, I think, even if the Poirier-Conor fight doesn't end up being for a title. We'll see how things play out. I can't see how it won't be for a title, in all honesty. I think Poirier and Conor's rematch is a big enough fight with big enough guys in the rankings, at least if they fight 155 pounds, that you have to make that fight for the title. But That's just my opinion on things. So getting back to kind of my retrospective, I gave Gaethje a 5% chance. I thought the game plan was going to be there with Whitman, and I think they did fight to their game plan to an extent, but Gaethje's forward pressure, I think, really screwed up what they had planned to do originally. I think Gaethje had planned to lead the striking dance a little bit more, be a little more methodical, and Khabib stole that from him. And didn't allow him to fight the game plan. So even though I kind of hung my hat on Whitman's game plan of how to get it done, I think that ultimately he just wasn't able to execute it the way they had planned. And Khabib is an enigma as far as what he's going to do out there, and it's hard to predict how dominant he's going to be. It's not hard to predict. It's just, I guess, maybe hard to predict how he's going to dominate you, potentially, because he's fought all these guys just a little bit differently. He didn't have quite the same front pressure when he fought Conor. Maybe he was afraid of the left hand. Who knows? It's just, or even the Poirier fight. Maybe he was a little more afraid of his boxing. Maybe they weren't as afraid of Gaethje, so they just get pressing forward. Maybe Khabib just wanted to get out of there. So many questions, none of them really need to be answered. The fact of the matter is, the guy's undefeated. He made amazing title defenses. He was dominant in all of them. There was no questionable times where somebody else could have won. There was never really a moment where he got stung. It was never a moment on the ground where he thought he was going to get submitted. Although he did maybe get stung briefly by Poirier, but it honestly doesn't matter. The guy is undefeated, and he's the best lightweight fighter there has ever been. I think that's the easiest accolade to give him at this point. There's no point in, I think, looking at anybody else at lightweight right now that can hold a candle to him. Now, with that being said, is he better than, your John Joneses, your GSPs? No, I don't think so. I think for the moment you can put him at the pound-for-pound top list. That's perfectly fair. I think he's earned that. It's really just an award off your resume. It's kind of made up, right? You don't really earn pound for pound. So I think he's pound for pound right now number one. He's in the talk of greatest of all time, but he's not number one. He's not the GOAT. That's still Jones and GSP, in my opinion. Anderson Silva. Hell, you can talk about Jose Aldo. There's a lot of guys you can talk about as the GOAT. Khabib is somewhere in that list, but he's in the top 10, top 15. He's not number one. And I guess that's the only thing you want to hold against him. That's it. He's not the greatest there ever was because he didn't win a division in another weight class or defend the title as many times as the other guys, like your John Joneses and your GSPs. So ultimately, not the GOAT, but certainly the greatest lightweight of all time. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, which you did get correct. Robert Whittaker defeats Jared Cannonier. Pretty much played out like I thought. I knew that Whittaker would be able to handle the power, just like we saw him deal with Romero, and he basically did that against Cannonier. He chopped away Cannonier. It was slow and decisive, but he did it. 69 strikes to 53, and one knockdown, which kind of sealed the deal in the unanimous decision. He also nearly put Cannonier away. Great body kicks, just great shots, clean shots. He just looked good. He kept Jared reaching and getting desperate with power, just like he had done to Romero in the past, and ultimately, that's just not the way to defeat Robert Whittaker. Like Izzy did, with slickness and his style, something Cannonier doesn't quite have. Maybe you can get it done, but for what it's worth, Whittaker is probably now on his way to be fighting for the strap one more time in his sequel, his Pot 2 against Israel Adesanya. So heads off to Whittaker. We did pick that one correctly. And another one we got correct, Volkov defeats Walt Harris. So awesome fight. Harris, again, big power, but not able to do much with it. Volkov really needs a more capable opponent at heavyweight. Outstrikes him 45-16 and just puts on a kickboxing clinic, ending it very early on in the second round, a minute 15 seconds in. Fairly easy call for us, in my opinion. And another one we got correct, Philip Hawes defeats Jacob Malkoun. 18 seconds, not much to say about it. We had called Hawes and got all of the debut fights correct. So hats off to us on that one. Malkoun scores no knockdowns, no strikes, no takedowns, no subs. It was one-sided if there ever was one. And one that was pretty close, but close on the stats, but remember watching it, it wasn't all that close watching it. Lauren Murphy defeats Lilia Shakarova, picks up a rear naked choke in the second round. I thought Shakarova was reaching and just didn't look like she was doing all that well. Murphy obviously got this thing to the mat and closed the door, so hats off to her. Another one we got correct. Hits just keep on coming. Magomed Magomed Ankalaev defeats Ion Cutelaba. 2 knockdowns. He just looked better than Cutelaba all night. Cutelaba was again reaching, pawing for big shots, not able to land any. And Ankalaev after the first knockdown, put him down again and then hit him with some nasty ground and pound, which did shut his lights out on the mat. So maybe just a little late stoppage there. Who knows? But hats off to Ankalaev, and one we got correct. And one that we got incorrect, Tai Tuivasa defeats Stefan Struve. Man, I hate Stefan Struve. He has a 9-inch reach advantage against Tuivasa. Can never utilize a jab. Is just a little too slow. I mean, he's just too big for his own good, I guess. He wasn't able to execute any of his game plan and got knocked out very late in round number 1, 4 minutes, 59 seconds. I'm tired of watching Stefan Struve. His numbers always look all lopsided because of his 9-inch reach advantage. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know. It's just frustration on my part. And that one that, I think was a little bit questionable, but Casey Kenny defeats Nathaniel Wood. So I thought Wood won the fight personally, but Casey Kenny, 123 strikes to Wood's 136 and 2 takedowns. But Kenny didn't do anything really with the takedowns, so that leads me kind of back to Wood, but he still scored him. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Personally, I thought Wood won. That's just me, though. Either way, we got it wrong, but it was a very tight fight. I knew it was going to be a good fight. It was fight of the night, money for sure. But hats off to Kenny. He picked up a phenomenal victory for one night. I just don't think he quite won. In one that certainly was deserving, which we also got correct, Shavkat Rakhmonov defeats Alex Oliveira. So this was a great call on our behalf, with Romanov looking phenomenal, shutting down Alex Oliveira, who did not make weight, mind you. Romanov looked like a solid talent, picking up a guillotine late in round number 1. And the next one we didn't get correct or wrong. This was a draw. Da Un Jung draws with Sam Alvey. I thought Jung did just a little bit more with the knockdown. I don't know. It was close. Alvey certainly had his moments. I thought I was Jung, but hey, one of my buddies was over and said, hey, you like draws sometimes when they are close. And even though they're bad for gambling, they're good for the sport. And so I ultimately got to say it was a fair draw. I just thought Jung did a little bit more. So, hey, my opinion doesn't matter in the course of events here. And so we got this one neither right nor wrong. And actually, I got my numbers wrong here. Actually, I went 8-3-1. So, still only 2/3% accurate, but 8-4 isn't really correct. It's not really a loss. So, 8-3-1 is the real numbers on the night. And then the last two we got right as well. Miranda Maverick defeats Liana Jojua. Knockout very late in round number 1. Actually, it was a doctor stoppage, maybe is a better way to put it. Jojua ended up with a really nasty cut on the bridge of her nose, and it just would not stop bleeding in between rounds, so they had to give it to Miranda Maverick. And hats off to her. She's even studying for a PhD, so really happy to see her getting success and obviously working hard outside of the octagon as well. And then the last one picked up an armbar victory to start the night. Joel Alvarez kind of starting the night sort of how it would end, because if that triangle wasn't there, the armbar was. But either way, we got a submission victory out of Alvarez, and he defeats Yakovlev pretty handily 3 minutes into round number 1. So solid night for us. I said it was just so-so. It just maybe wasn't Khabib undefeated style, but 8-3-1 are really great numbers. We missed Gaethje, Struve, and Wood, but hey, what are you going to do? We had some close fights there. I thought Gaethje just was outdone. Struve, I hate that guy. All right, I'm being facetious here. I don't actually hate him, but I hate making calls for him because, man, his numbers just never add up usually, at least not lately. The guy is on the slide. And then the last one in Wood, close fight. Sometimes you're going to get one wrong, and hey, we just got to take it. So solid numbers overall, but we got to look forward. We got to get into Silva versus Hall. So let's get into that part of the show. All right, before we get into the main event here, we just got to talk about it real quick. This is Anderson Silva's last fight. This is his retirement fight. He is going out, and I think that he's going to go out on a W here. I can't go against one of the greatest of all time. That has been a big conversation in kind of the MMA Twitter world right now. Who is the GOAT? And I don't know who it is for sure. My strongest vote goes for GSP personally, but if you think it's Khabib, or you think it's Jones, or you think it's Silva, like I think he's in the conversation for, you're not wrong. All of these guys were extremely dominant for the times that they were champion, and anything is up for grabs at that point, right? So Like I said, though, Silva, I think, is going to be able to pull this out. Now, Uriah Hall is a fantastic competitor. He's a little bit up there in age, too, at 36. Silva's 45, so he's significantly up there. But honestly, I have a hard time picking against him here. It's just, in the grain of salt situation to keep in mind is that Anderson Silva's stats over his career, they have dwindled. And so I think his averages could be a little above what's possible for him, especially with Uriah Hall looking so good recently. Win over Antonio Carlos Jr., granted split decision, and a knockout of Bevan Lewis. And, we've seen tough work out of Silva, right? Lost to Jared Cannonier, lost to Adriel Adesanya, although that was a good fight. Beats Derek Brunson back in 2017, and then 4 straight losses in a row with a no contest to Nick Diaz. I mean, this guy over his last, let's count him out here. Let's exclude the no contest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's 1-6 over his last 7. But I think he's going to go out in a W. He hasn't had a really good win in about 3 years, and I really just want him to have a capstone in his career. I'm not saying go out and bet on this one, but that's going to be the call. That's what the stats say, and so that's what I'm going with. The Spider would have, beaten up Uriah Hall all day, put him in the Matrix, and he would have made him look the fool. It's just, can 45-year-old Silva do that? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going with it anyways. That's what the stats say. He's the pick. All right, the next one here is going to be probably the best fight on the card, and that is going to be Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, getting his camo shorts, by the way, from what I understand, going up against Andre Touchy-Feely. So Thug Nasty, Touchy-Feely, you know how I feel about their fight names. Not my favorite, but I love Thug Nasty, and I really like him in this one. He's undefeated, 9 submissions over his 13 wins, and while Feely, training over an American Team Alpha Male, does have a lot of exposure to wrestling and submission and groundwork, he's proved to be mostly a striker, and I don't think he's had the best takedown defense in the world. I think that he is going to be able to be taken to the ground, and I think that Mitchell is going to be able to have his way with him. When we look here at the takedown defense, it's just 69% for Feely, and I think that Mitchell's going to be able to pierce that, get it to the mat, and really, really take advantage of where I think he's the best. Looking at him, decision over Rosa, saw the twister over Matt Sales, another solid decision over Bobby Moffitt, Tyler Diamond. I mean, the guy's credentials are starting to pile up at this point, and I think he's going to stay on track here. I think he's going to pick up a great win against a good vet in Andre Feely, who has struggled off and on. He's 3-1 over his last 4, but he did the loss to Sodiq Youssef and just a split decision against Charles Jourdain, so he wasn't dominant in his last one and lost the one before that. I think that Bryce Mitchell is going to be able to capitalize on that shakiness and take a win away in this one. So we are going with Thug Nasty in his camo shorts debut. All right, we're going to have a firefight in this one because we have a couple of knockout artists in Kevin Holland and Mahmoud Muradov going at it here. So we got the 9 knockouts over 19 wins for Holland, and we got the 16 knockouts over 24 wins for Muradov. Both these guys are looking phenomenal right now. Muradov hasn't lost a fight since 2016. Granted, he's only been in the UFC for 2 of those, whereas Holland does have the experience here, and that's where I'm going to give it to Holland. So Holland is on a 3-fight win streak, right? Darren Stewart, Joaquin Buckley, and Anthony Hernandez. 2 out of 3 of those he did knock out, and he had a fantastic fight, I thought, with Darren Stewart, a firefight if there ever was one. I think that, honestly, Holland has the experience here. I think he has the skills to pay the bills. I think he can get it done. I think he's going to be able to deal well with Muradov's power. He was able to handle guys like Darren Stewart's power, so I expect the same thing to carry forward. Kevin Holland just keeps getting better and better at this 185-pound weight class, and I expect him to put away Mahmoud in this one. I think it's going to be a KO. I think it's going to be a solid counter shot. Let's give it to Kevin Holland to pick up the W on Saturday. All right, I've talked about this guy loads of times before, but we're going to have Greg Hardy, a guy that I think is redeeming himself, and going up against the Crochet boss, Maurice Green. And in this one here, I like Hardy, but really it's going to come down to how tough is Green. Hardy is such an explosive competitor, gets top-tier training. Not that Maurice Green doesn't also get top-tier training over Jackson Wink, but the American Top Team nature, he's living down there. He's training every day. I think that Hardy is a committed mixed martial artist, and I think that his skills are going to finally shine here, and he's going to finally be able to shut the door. This guy's not had a TKO since Juan Adams, and I think he's finally going to be able to shut the door on Maurice Green. Not that he isn't tough. Green is tough. I just think that, honestly, Hardy is going to be able to wear on him, and I think he is going to be able to test that chin where, it has been tested recently. That TKO loss from Pavlovich back in 2019. And then obviously he was submitted back in January of 2020. Got the win over Volante, but I think he's going to go back to his losing ways. I think Greg Hardy's going to pick up a win here. He's the call for Saturday. All right, moving on to our next one here at 155 pounds. We're going to have King Bobby Green taking on Thiago Moises. And in this one, I like the American Top Team product. I like Thiago in this one. Now, Green has the experience, but he also has taken a few bumps on the chin. Losses to Francisco Trinaldo and Drakkar Klose back-to-back. Before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak. I mean, he has turned it around. Wins over Alan Patrick, Lando Venata, Clay Guida. The guy has picked up wins. He's not shutting the door, though. He has no killer instinct. He is going to decision after decision. Sometimes there are wins, sometimes there are losses. This guy has not shut the door on somebody since back in 2013 against James Krause, and he also had the door shut on him to Dustin Poirier back in 2016. But other than that, it's been decisions the whole way. It's been a split draw, split decision, unanimous decision. I know he's getting it done. I know he's demonstrating high fight IQ, but I do like Moises a little bit better here. Three knockouts, 5 submissions. He's showing he can get it done on the ground. He's also only lost 4 decisions in his career. They were all by decision, and I think honestly he can take advantage of a guy who's fighting, I think, a little too cautiously. We had the Achilles lock against Michael Johnson the last outing. I think he, can get a stoppage here. I think he can take advantage of some of the cautiousness we've seen with Bobby Green, and I think he can shut the door on this guy. Now, might be a tall order. Green is a sophisticated veteran with a lot of experience, but Moises is a young fighter that I think wants to shut the door, wants to make a statement, wants to, show what his 25 years of experience in life can do for him, and I think he's going to get a W on Saturday. Okay, we've talked about guys on the slide quite a bit here tonight, and one of them here is Alex Hernandez, or Alex the Great, but he hasn't looked all that great recently. He's 1-2 over his last 3. Obviously, the bad loss to Cerrone back almost 2 years ago now. Did get the win over Trinaldo and then lost pretty badly to Drew Dober. This time he's getting Chris Gertzmacher. And in this one here, Gertzmacher, has had some struggles, although, actually, better way to put it is he hasn't really fought. He's got some cage rust on him, so, this is one Hernandez should be able to take advantage of. But, I think for a guy that last went out there and beat Joe Lozon in 2018, he's a guy who's going to be able to pour it on in Hernandez. Not a lot of guys knock out Joe Lozon, right? This is a guy that certainly can put it on a guy who has struggled with confidence, or maybe overconfidence, false confidence, too inflated of an ego in the past, and I think that Gertzmacher is going to be able to take advantage of that. Granted, we haven't seen him fight in quite some time, but he had the skill set to beat a guy like Hernandez in the past, so I'm going to stick with the call here. We're going with Gertzmacher to pick up a win in this contest. All right, next one here, we are going to have Sean Tarzan Strickland taking on Jack the Hammer Marshman. And in this one here, I like Sean Strickland just a bit more in this one. Very close, but we've seen a lot of struggling out of Marshman recently. The loss to Shabazian, losses to Antonio Carlos Jr., Carl Roberson, and then he did get the split decision win over John Phillips. Let's face facts, it was a close fight. And I know we've seen some, struggles recently out of Strickland, but one of those losses was to one Usman and the second Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, both top-tier competitors. But he did beat guys like Court McGee and Nordine Talib, which are solid mid-tier competitors, and I think that's what Marshman really is. I think that Strickland's going to be able to plow right through him. He's 20-3. He's only really lost to some of the best. One of those was Ponzinibbio, Usman, and Dos Santos. Zalecki, Dos Santos. I don't see Strickland honestly getting derailed in this one. I think he's developed more. He's only 29 years of age. He's into his prime, and I think he gets a W on Saturday. All right, last one here before we get to the debuters here. We're going to have Jason Witt, the Vanilla Gorilla, taking on Cole Williams. And in this one here, honestly, the stats are horrible for these guys. There's not really much to say. Both of them got put away very early in the first round. For Jason Witt, it was Takashi Sato in the first round via TKO punches. And it was Claudio Silva putting away Jason Witt 2 minutes 35 seconds into round number 1 in his last outing. So, this one's kind of a toss-up here. I like Cole Williams a little bit more. Just from what we've seen out of him. He has a much better record. I think we've seen some good explosive stuff out of him. Obviously, both these guys have mostly fought in regional or smaller promotions, so it's all kind of hard to say, but I'm going to stick here with Williams. This is honestly more of a, a debut style judge, but hey, there's some data, so we'll use it. I'm going with Cole Williams in that one. And then to round things out here, we do have 3 debut fights. So we are going to have, let's see here. We missed one here. We're going to have Courtney Casey and Priscilla Cachoeira before we get to the debuts. And in this one here, I have kind of gone back and forth on this one because some new number crunching. But Courtney Casey is the one I'm going to go with here. Originally I had Cachoeira. I think they're really, really tight competitors here. Obviously, Casey doesn't have the best record at 9-8. She's really off and on. Win over Angela Hill, lost to Calvillo. Win to Mara Rebello, then a loss to Jillian Robertson. But Jillian Robertson, heavy ground specialist. Obviously, we don't have to worry about that as much with Cachoeira because she only has 5 knockouts, over 9 wins with 0 submissions. So I think Courtney Casey here can get it done. She's pretty well-rounded, 4 submissions, 3 knockouts. She might be able to take advantage of Cachoeira maybe slightly on the ground just because she's not, sharpening those skill sets in the cage. Hard fight to call, though, honestly. For Cachoeira, 3 losses in a row previous to her win over Shayna Dobson. So lost to Carolina, lost to Molly McCann, and lost to Shevchenko, although who's not losing to Valentina Shevchenko. So, hey, hard one to call here, honestly, but I'm going to side with Courtney Casey despite, the kind of 50-50 record at this point. All right, now we're actually on to the debuters. So we are going to have Dustin Jacoby take on Justin Leday. Leday has kind of gotten the short end of the stick thus far in the UFC. He's really taken on, I think, just some real hot prospects. Rakic was his first fight. Then he took on Johnny Walker, who was just on a tear at that point, and then Alexa K. Moore. Now, K. Moore probably should have beat, but I think that he's going to be able to snap this losing streak here and get back to his winning ways against Dustin Jacoby, who, we don't know too much about. He's coming into the UFC looking halfway decent. He's 12-5, has 2 wins, and back-to-back, one in SCL, and now one on Dana White Contender Series. I think, honestly, though, Leday gets it done. He was looking incredible, 9-0 prospect coming into the UFC. I think he'll get back to his winning ways in this one. Next one is Miles Johns taking on Kevin Natividad. And in this one here, I like Kevin here just a bit more. He's looked like a real hot prospect coming in off of LFA. Just some great, wins, all via knockout for the most part. He does have 1 submission on his record, but 5 KOs over his 9 wins. Whereas we don't see as much shutting the door with Miles Johns. Just 2 knockouts and 2 submissions over his 10 wins. I like the ability for a guy to shut the door, especially at the early stages of their career. I like the aggression. I think it's going to pay off. We're going with Natividad in that one. And then we have one more here to round things out. We have Adrian Yanez versus Victor Rodriguez. And this one here, I like Yanez. He has more experience. Victor coming in at just 4-2. Does have 4 knockouts over his 4 wins, so he does look like a very good prospect. But Yanez also looks hot as well with a knockout coming in the Dana White Contender Series very recently at just 39 seconds in. So I'm going to stick with the guy I last saw on Dana White, and we're going to stick with Adrian in that one. So let's go over them one more time. We have Silva, Mitchell, Holland, Hardy, Moises, Gertzmarker, Casey, Strickland, Williams, Natividad, Yanez, and Leday to round things out. So, if you'd like to get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast, reach out to me at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. You also can get in touch with me on Twitter at MMAFightPicks01. And there's also the Patreon as well. If you'd like to support the show at a dollar amount that makes the most sense to you, head on over there. And I would thank you from the bottom of my heart if you do. So, we'll be back, obviously, with more fights. We are just jam-packed. We have no rest for the weary here. We're just going to keep on rolling. So we have the Hall Silva on Saturday. The following week, we're going to have Santos and Teixeira. That card is shaping up to be pretty decent. There's only 2 official ones right here. But I love the main event. I think Glover Teixeira is just on a tear right now. And obviously, Thiago Santos is making his comeback since the John Jones loss. So I'm looking forward to that one. We'll have a fight night on the 14th of November. Then we have the flyweight championship of the men's division, Figueiredo versus Perez. Not like super stoked about that one, but we also have Valentina Shevchenko going in that one. UFC 255. That's a tough one. I know there's 2 belts on the line, but I'm not seeing anything to justify spending money on That one's tough. We'll revisit that one as far as value later. Then we'll have another fight night on the 28th, which is not come together yet. So, yeah, I guess we're just coming down. We got a little bit of a pay-per-view hangover since the stacked Khabib card. So I guess we'll just have to deal with Figueiredo Perez and Shevchenko versus Maia. And yeah, it's kind of rough because the rest of the way down, the only other fight I really, really like is Mauricio Hua, Paul Craig, and then maybe Kyle Dockhouse getting in there. Yeah, it's a rough one for sure. It is. Yeah, they offer coupons on these things because that's what I'm thinking. Anyways, I'll still have the fight picks for you no matter what the value is on the card. And until I speak with you again next time, happy fight picking.